$1? I barely know her. All right, we're back with my favorite way to start a show. And while this is usually a marketing podcast, today it's going to be a math podcast. It's probably a bad idea to take math advice from someone with a 2.4 GPA in college, but you can trust that I understand the economics of e-commerce very well. And to be honest, I wouldn't have a job and I wouldn't be able to grow brands the way I do if I didn't have a firm grasp of the math that just makes sense and dollars. Today I want to start with a quote from Henry Ford. He said, "The man that stops advertising to save time is like a man who stops his watch to save money." Nope, had that backwards. He probably wasn't drinking Tennessee whiskey when he said it. He said, "The man that stops advertising to save money is like the man who stops his watch to save time." And I know a lot of CFOs and CEOs might look at marketing or advertising specifically as the single biggest line item on a P&L. But for all of us in ecom and direct-to-consumer native brands, 95+% of our revenue comes directly from that advertising. I don't believe that advertising is an expense, but a long-term investment in the future health of your company. So in this episode, I'm going to cover the two most common mistakes brands make when it comes to managing the math of their marketing department, and I'll teach you how to avoid them. Speaking of math, let me tell you about some juicy conversion rate metrics from today's sponsor, Intelligems. If you haven't heard, Intelligems is your one-stop shop for all your split testing needs. And just this month alone, I've had 2 separate tests produce a 40% uplift in conversion rate on our top products and landing pages that I've been testing. In the year since I've been an Intelligems customer, we've been able to scale site traffic over 60% while increasing our conversion rate and revenue per session. Split testing with Intelligems will add dollars to your bottom line, no doubt about it. Go check them out right now. All right, back to the episode. Now, first warning, if you're listening on Spotify and Apple, you might want to hop over to my YouTube or my Twitter and watch this episode because I'm going to be saying a lot of numbers and it might be easier to look at the graphics I put on screen just to make sure you're following along. All right, the first problem I see brands make all the time is they expect to grow top-line revenue at the same marketing efficiency ratio that they have now. So I'll hear from a brand that spent $1 million on ads last year and they did $3 million in revenue. Their blended ROAS was a 3 or their MER was a 33%, depending on how you like to look at it. Let's say their overhead was $500,000. COGS are 30%, so they netted $600,000 at the end of the year. It's a great start for a growing brand. But then they make a mistake and they assume that they can double advertising spend next year and maintain the same MER or the same blended ROAS. So they say they want to spend $2 million and make $6 million, which means they'll almost triple their contribution margin from the year prior. Now, I said that's a mistake. And before a bunch of people jump in the comments and say, "Oh, actually, I've doubled ad spend and at the same or better ROAS, you just have to be good at marketing or use cost caps or try this software." Shut the fuck up, dork. Shut up, dork. It doesn't benefit anyone to plan for the best case scenario. Yes, that can happen. I've been a part of brands that have done that. In fact, I'm doing it right now for the second year in a row. But there's no reason not to bring an umbrella because it might rain. And if the sun shines, then nothing's lost, but you don't want to get caught out in the storm without a plan. So I suggest planning for a loss in marketing efficiency when you're aggressively scaling a brand. If it maintains or improves, you'll be happy anyway, but you should have a plan for decreased marketing efficiency. All right, back to my original point. I hate when people interrupt in the comments like that. That's so rude. Where was I? All right, so they want to spend $2 million and make $6 million. But here's where that plan goes off the rails. They start to scale spend, and ROAS does decrease. While they spent last year at a 3x, this year is only a 2.5. The leadership team incorrectly diagnoses this as a marketing problem, but it's not. It's a volume problem. The CFO or the CEO or sometimes even CMOs will tell you to cut back ad spend to gain efficiency. And that might make the next weekly report look a little bit better. That might make even next month's report look better. But it's not a long-term solution. And cutting spend to gain efficiency is not a strategy that pays dividends in the long run. You cannot save your way to millions of dollars in profit. You got to spend your way there. So, because this brand decided to cut spend, they'll have only spent $1.5 million instead of the $2 million that they planned on, which means they'll only do $3.7 million in revenue, and you'll end up with less profit than you had the year before. The CMO will get fired. The marketing team might get let go too. They'll abandon marketing strategies that might have actually been working all right, and they'll spend the next year or however long they survive chasing tactics and softwares and gurus that promise to increase ROAS. But that's a losing game. You should be such a good operator. You should run such a healthy business that you should be able to solve for a less than desirable return on ad spend. And here's what that solution should look like. They should have spent more money on ads the worse their performance got. I know it's counterintuitive. I know you're going to have to fight your CFO on this. I know you're going to have to keep reminding them of this math, but the math doesn't lie. If they had spent more money, if they'd spent $2.5 million, and even had their ROAS drop to a 2.4 and their MER increase to a 42%, they'd still nearly double contribution margin from last year, and it's the next best scenario to that ideal plan. Now, this doesn't just apply to fast-growing seven-figure brands. Here's the forecast of a real brand that's forecasting a $10 million fourth quarter. Now, I help them run these scenarios, and if performance gets a little bit worse, and they cut ad spend by 20% like they usually do when performance drops, they're going to miss their bottom line goal by $1.2 million. But instead, if they don't cut spend by 20%, if they increase spend by just 11%, they'll hit their top line goal and they'll come as close as possible to their original contribution margin goal. Don't just rely on my math here. Create this spreadsheet, enter in your real revenue targets, realistic marketing metrics, worst case scenario marketing metrics, put in your real overhead and your real COGS, and start to play with a few different scenarios. I want to note here that I'm not a growth at all costs kind of marketer. I've never worked for anyone that had the luxury of being able to lose money on acquisition. I've only ever worked for brands that need profit to survive. But the best way I've found to increase the bottom line is to increase the top line. And you can't do that without increasing ad spend. So, thank you for sitting through a boring math episode of this podcast. But this math has made a lot of people rich. And this math has made a lot of brands I work for millions and millions and millions of dollars. Trust me, I hate doing math. But I wanted to walk you through each of these formulas and each of these scenarios so you can unhandcuff yourself from an arbitrary ROAS and MER target that were set by someone who didn't run these scenarios. I want you to be able to unhandcuff yourselves from arbitrary and unrealistic ROAS goals set by someone that doesn't understand the economics of your business. Go do this math. Communicate with your team about the real purpose of the business. And if you decide that purpose is to grow the bottom line as fast and aggressively as you can, then this math is going to help you unlock that next level of growth. Now, I think this is going to be my last math episode for a while. So once you've done this math, go check out the rest of Tactical and Practical. They're all short, 10 to 15 minutes episodes just like this one. And each one provides a singular tactic that you can use to market your ecom brand more effectively than you might be today. So do this math and then go listen to the rest of the pods to get better at marketing. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.